I'm not usually one for pick'em videos, but given that we have a North American major and FaZe Clan could potentially give North America their third major victory of all time, I figured I'd make
But
one
wait,
now.
Vu, I'm a little confused. I thought North America had only won one major.
We'll get to that later. First off, we need to bang through the quick predictions, the one that everybody knows the outcome of. We got Fury over Pain, we got FaZe over Mongols, we got Navi over Vitality, and we got Spirit over Mouse. Zero question marks to be had in the first round, right?
I have many questions actually.
Go ahead, let's hear them.
So Navi over Vitality. What world are we living in? Am I on the wrong channel? Am I getting punked?
So as we were talking about, so we've got Lionhearts here, okay? We did a couple of these predictions. Didn't go very well. We did a couple of these on his channel. Now, importantly, he obviously doesn't realize that North America has won 3 majors, or 2 majors actually, because if you think about it, FaZe winning a major with Twists as their star player, that's a North American Oregon and North American star player, right? That's what you were talking about?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, listen, I wouldn't consider it, but I just never really thought about it from that perspective. But now you've said it, I'm in.
And how does that make you think that Vitality is somehow going to beat Navi?
Well, let's see. Vitality are probably the best roster ever assembled, and Navi have 4 Make-A-Wish kids and 1 in-game leader.
Best roster ever assembled?
I mean, it's like second best, if nothing worse.
Better than Astralis?
It could be. It's definitely trying to be. Maybe in terms of skill, I'd say skill, yes.
Better than Navi 2021?
Yes.
FaZe 2018?
Yes.
I'm not that against that. Actually, after I think like their first event win, I said this team reminds me more of Prime Astralis than any team I've ever seen. It got posted to Reddit and I got absolutely shit on for it. And now I just feel like I should repost that and say this is the case. Say, what about today, dickhead? But okay, Vitality over Navi. That one was just to trigger everyone in the comments. And I think that was
Thank you
fair.
for the engagement. Love that. Keep writing those comments, please.
Furia versus Pain. I feel like we both think Furia.
Yeah, I think this one's going to be close just because domestic Brazilian games are always kind of like a hard thing to predict. Really, I picked Furia just because it's the cooler storyline. Like, I really do like this Pain roster, and it was great to see them turn around after so much bad form early in this year. But it would just be really cool to see Furia like take this step forward, finally make some proactive roster changes, and then immediately benefit by making a semis only to lose to FaZe.
When it comes to it, I really like Pain as well. I think Pain have a really cool storyline, but I think the reality is this is where their storyline should end. You just have so much experience on Furia's side with these types of moments, with these types of situations. It's just if it feels like a 50-50 on paper, and maybe I kind of feel like on paper Pain arguably could be better than Furia, but it's close to a 50-50, and I just feel like in this environment, I think we got to give it to Furia. And then when we go to like FaZe Mongols, it feels kind of the same, except if it feels not at all the same. Mongols on paper could be a 3 times better team, but as soon as they get into playoffs, Senzu, the drop off from Senzu is it's just so unbelievable. And anyone that's played like competitive CS or probably any sport, there are always players that when you see them in practice, they're so good. And then they go into a match. This is common in like CS where you go into a match and someone just plays different. It's not that they're fragging worse, although that's obviously part of the problem. It's that they're playing different. And I think that's the problem with Senzu. It's just that you can't, when you practice, you're trying to get an idea of what you can rely on your teammates doing and what situations you can rely on them like performing well in. And you put them in that spot and then they just don't. And it's really jarring. And I think I don't know, there's other problems with Mongols, but it just feels like when it comes down to it, they just don't perform on the stage.
Yeah, I think there's actually a couple of places to go about this. One, to just kind of follow on your comparison there to like traditional sports. I mean, the most obvious thing you could say about Senzu is that in terms of raw skill, it's like comparing James Harden in the regular season to the playoffs in basketball, whereas no one's going to doubt that James Harden is one of the best players to ever play basketball. It's just as soon as it gets to the games he has to win, he tends to drop off or blow up in really interesting ways. So Senzu is kind of facing a similar issue. Like, look what he did to G2 just yesterday. That was historic. It's the most kills in regulation in a major ever. I think most kills overall in a single map at a major as well after all the overtimes. So, like, if Senzu could play like that, then it gets much more interesting. But even just like a layer below that, FaZe has already beaten Mongols in a best of 3 at this major. And that has to count for something. But to kind of instantly contradict myself, I do think the map veto is probably the most interesting in this series out of anyone we're going to see played. because I don't think it's highly likely that Mongols are going to once again give FaZe their two best maps in Ancient and Anubis, which they've kind of been just relying on as like the backbone of this run at the major. I would expect the Mongols to force them elsewhere where they really can try and exploit that firepower, be it like a Mirage or a Dust 2, and just get them away from those high win rate maps they've been really relying on.
And then when it comes down to, I mean, Vitality Navi don't really have a chance. I'd say maybe they could have some crazy anti-stratting, but that's just not. It's just that would be a probably the biggest surprise of the major. Arguably, Falcons going out, not making it through stage 2 is a bigger surprise than Navi beating Vitality would be, but not by that much.
If I had to make a comparison to kind of follow up on the whole Astralis thing, this would be like that Ants team beating Astralis. This would be that level of upset. If Vitality lose in any place before, well, even like losing in the semis against a team like Spirit would be pretty remarkable. If Vitality don't make the finals, that's an underperformance. The expectation is that they win, they solidify the era, Zywo gets that second ring. They have to make the finals bar none for this to be satisfying in any way for what their narratives are at this point. So if Navi were to beat them, that would be a horrible look if you're an anti-Zywu agenda pusher, maybe like me. So it should be expected that Vitality win this. Just the question is, will Navi put up a fight? And honestly, the way that they're so inconsistent in terms of firepower, I think they won't.
Will Mao's put up a fight against Spirit?
I think that series is pretty much it's close every time they've played. So I actually think yes. I think we can actually set aside Mao's play in the group stage and look at them more in a vacuum because I think almost in an inversion of what they've been in previous years, this team tends to play really consistent in the playoffs and be a little bit more beatable in group stages. So I don't know. I think this is super open ended. I want Spirit to win just because I've made this comparison before in discussing this with you. When it comes down to it, Shiro and Donk are just light years ahead of Torji and Xerxin. Like they are just the better versions of those two players. So Spirit have the advantage in stars, but Mao's have the obvious advantage in depth. So if Mao's can get a very even spread of impact and someone like Spinks can really shine alongside Xerxin and Torji playing great in their respective matchups, then yeah, it's totally respectable to think that Mao's can beat them. This is probably going to be the closest game I would even say of all the playoffs. I think this has potential to be the most competitive game out of all the brackets.
My heart wants to put Mao's, but I feel like we're kind of running into the moment that people were expecting to happen a lot earlier, which is like Shuhei got benched and they have Brawlin take over and people question if his IGLing is going to work out. And I think his IGLing has been quite good, but I think sometimes you have kind of a honeymoon period, especially with a lurker joining the team. We see what happened with Vitality with Rops. I think you can kind of have a honeymoon period, especially if different players might have things that Spinks obviously didn't get along with some of the players on Vitality. Maybe those types of things are starting to wear on Mao's. I think Spinks is playing better generally on Mao's. He's doing an incredible job, but I think, you have a few things kind of coming together where it just doesn't feel like Mao's are at the place where they should be beating Spirit right now, even though my heart wants Mao's to win.
Yeah, I think if there's one thing to keep an eye on, because this is what stood out so strongly in their final series against Legacy yesterday, Mao's have been kind of just getting whooped on opening kills, and that's a pretty consistent trend through stage 3. So I think that obviously Donk being the best entry in the world, the best rifler in the world, I'm worried they're going to kind of get wrecked on the entries once again, and it's going to be a lot of pressure onto Brolin and Xerxin. If they do get those advantages in rounds where they do get the entry success, they need to convert those at a super high clip to make things close. Like I said, though, I think this is going to be 3 games regardless, but I'm more of a fan of Spirit. I'm more a fan of their structure and their players, believe it or not, even though I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Chopper. I think that Mao's are really going to be dependent on being able to hold their nerve if they're going to win this. But overall, I'm leaning Spirit.
This would actually be, I think, a kind of telling matchup for Mao's because this is a team Mao's generally has been, I think on paper, probably should always have been losing to Spirit, but generally has kind of gotten the better of them. They found ways to do it. And if they can find ways to do it again, then they're still impressing me. But I think this is where Spirit have just kind of pulled away a little bit from Mao's. I think Mao's is kind of on a bit of a downswing in my mind, and Spirit is on a little bit of an upswing. But that brings us to the next matchups where FaZe Furia. FaZe should win. Vitality, Spirit have a good chance. I mean, honestly, either Spirit or Mao's have a reasonable chance against Vitality. That's what you would expect to be the final. but it just should be Vitality.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways, I think everyone's biggest concern when Falcons decided to be a terrible team out of nowhere was that Vitality would kind of get like the Mickey Mouse Paris Part 2 kind of major run here. But they're gonna have to play great teams all the way through. Even Navi, even though they don't have the star power, they have a lot of structure. They're not exactly an easy team to beat, in my opinion. So Vitality to win this major are gonna have to beat a lot of their most threatening peers. When it comes to a Vitality Spirit matchup, it's going to come down to whether Donk is able to really be himself. Because in previous matchups, Vitality have done a great job of containing him and relying on the other players to win these rounds for Spirit. So if they do a good job of managing Donk's output, limiting the damage, then that can be an easier win for Spirit. I would expect kind of just like with Mouse and Spirit, if it comes down to it, this is going to be a very competitive game. I would expect it to go all 3 maps, but my heart wants to go Spirit just because I like the team so much. But
Why?
Vitality are the
Why?
favorites
But
for a reason.
why do you like the team? What
I
is
just
there to
I
like about Spirit?
I listen, neuron activated, don't go kill makes me do the happy, okay? And I just really like Shiro. I hate the anti-Shiro narrative. Same thing with Zontics to a certain extent too. So my deference is to kind of defend those players, faults and all. And when they play good, I think they play really exciting. So it's a team that I've become more endeared upon over just Donk over time. But let's be honest, like Vitality are the favorites for a reason. Vitality should be a shoe-in to make the finals bare minimum. And I think Spirit are going to run into their same issues where they're so reliant on Doc and Shiro that they're going to run out to just the spread of greatness that Vitality bring to the table. It's not unimaginable for them to win, but it's going to be an uphill battle. So I think it's going to be Vitality, but if Spirit wins, I would not be like, oh my God, how?
Yeah, I mean, MR12, best of 3, anything can happen. I think someone showed that one of their best of 5 finals, Vitality actually would have lost. Was it Mouse? Was it? They would have lost to one team, I think, in a best of 5 final. I
I think it
guess
was
it must have been
Falcons.
Falcons. Yeah, it must have been Falcons because they had the 2 close series, right? And Mouse got 3-0'd last time, even though the maps were very close. But, I mean, best of 3, anything can happen. And we've seen already Magic's have a godlike life game performance. So if he just gets into whatever mindset got him that game, then they can definitely win. But just by all means, on an average day, Vitality beats Spirit 4 times out of 5. Let's go with that.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair. I do think FaZe versus Furia is also an interesting matchup because it pretty much for Furia, the whole question mark in this playoffs is going to be will Molodoy realize where he's at? Because right now he's very clearly the rookie who doesn't realize the pressure he should be dealing with. He's just playing free and very just like unburdened by the expectations. But that can always change the moment you're playing in front of a crowd. So if Molodoy can continue to be as good as he's been, I believe it was put out on Twitter by either the TOs or another stats guy. Molodoy has the most like op kills per round, or like the second most of anyone in stage 3. Like he's really playing much above expectations. So I'm interested to see him play against Simple and see what he does against, the GOAT. So I don't think Furia are straight up out of that matchup. Like I just feel like they've shown too much for me to write them off. And FaZe, it's FaZe. They're gonna make it painful if they win. They never 2-0. Like there's no such thing as an easy FaZe.
I feel like the bottom side of the bracket is like, let's be rational. And the top side of the bracket is just, let's be real here. We all want FaZe to win.
Yes.
Everyone wants FaZe to win. Even Brazilian fans that really love Fallen, they deep down, I think they also want FaZe to win. Like maybe like on the surface they want Fury to win, they're cheering for Furia, and then deep down they still probably want Fury to win. But like really, if you really dig deep, like all the way down, all the way to your core, even Furia fans, they want FaZe to win. They just want it.
I think it'd be one of the best narratives in the history of Counter-Strike to have FaZe playing Vitality in the grand finals. Like, regardless of outcome, it would be maybe one of the most historic matches. I'll even go one hyperbolic step further. This might be one of the most historically important matches in the history of esports. Because we're talking about the undisputed best player to ever play Counter-Strike, and the only other player until Donk plays 5 more years that is close to challenging that. So for both sides, there's so much in that grand finals. It's going to be entertaining regardless. I almost don't care who wins out of FaZe versus Vitality. Counter-Strike wins from a FaZe Vitality grand finals.
But FaZe are going to win. Anyways, if you want to see more of Lionhearts, check him out. Where?
At Lionhearts CS2 on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Lionhearts1337. Yes, it's an old Twitter handle. Don't mention it. I really enjoyed making all these pick 'em videos with Vu, and hopefully you see us collaborating on some stuff in the future. It has been awesome to work with, and I'm glad to be here on the channel. Thank you guys so much.